Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Aim and Inspire. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today I have a special video. I'm going to be going through my first IDPA competition. As you guys know, I recently started my competition journey in general. I started off with USPSA, but before I was even doing that, I was doing the IDPA practices at my local range. And so I was like, I took a chance and I enjoyed the IDPA practices, and everyone was saying how awesome competition shooting is and how you really hone in on all of your skills, which I've definitely felt that I've grown quite a bit from where I started a couple years ago. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I love competing. But when I did start competing, I jumped in immediately to the run and gun of USPSA, and I didn't even look back. And someone was like, Michaela, if you do USPSA, you can do IDPA. And I'm like, you're right, because I find that the differences between IDPA and USPSA is USPSA is more run gun, you're in it, winning, very fast-paced environment. IDPA, which is the International Defensive Pistol Association, that's more so you're fighting, you're protecting, more so defensive operations, things like that. To kind of defend yourself in real world scenarios, right? It kind of trains you. Like, you'll have some in the clips I show from my first competition, you'll see a few where it's a lot of cover, right? You have to stay behind cover. And there might be starting positions of you on your back, like you're laying in bed. There might be some where you're like kneeling down, like if you're hiding behind something, things like that. So it's very interesting. And when I actually started with my USPSA belt. And I think for the future, I'm going to have more so of IDPA. And there aren't really any like IDPA, USPSA setups, but based on what they are, I feel that I would probably try to run it a little bit more so concealed, right? Because you do have to have concealment in that. And so what I had wasn't like a fisher's vest that I picked up that allows you to kind of cover your belt and gun area, and then when you're ready, you'll pull it back and then pull it out, right? So you have to kind of have some sort of concealment in certain situations. But in terms of concealment I'm referring to, I would probably run appendix or something along like in the waistband, like real everyday carry kind of situation, right? So that I can get some more practice in that area. But I absolutely loved it. It's a lot different than USPSA. It is a little more rule-based, right? So in USPSA, you have a stage layout. They tell you how many targets you have, if it's Comstock or Virginia, if it's steals, best, if it's 2 or 3 on paper, things like that, right? And then from there, you walk the stage and run it however you feel fit. Safely, of course. For IDPA, that one is thrown out the window, right? They set the stage plan. They tell you how to run it. They tell you where to stand. Like, there's fault lines. Like, you can't pass these fault lines if you step over it. And there are some of those in USPSA too. But because this is more so cover those walls, you can't really be out too much and exposed to the target. And then when you're shooting targets, you have to shoot them in the order of like outside in and then the closest one to you, right? So in the video, you'll see like a couple clips, and I'll do a couple reflections on them. I always do my reflections for my first competitions. So we'll go through a reflection after each stage and tell you what I thought of it, how I ran, and some lessons I learned from them, from mistakes I made. And, it's a learning curve and a learning journey that I am happy to share. I'm open to feedback and tips and tricks and things to get better. I feel like IDPA is more so accuracy based, right? So the targets are even a little different in terms of their values. So for IDPA, you have, I believe it's 0 is the equivalent to an A zone. 1 is the equivalent to, I want to say like the C, and then you have 2 and 3, which is like the D areas, like around the body and then the head. I could be wrong, but it's similar to IDPA, which is like A, B, C, D kind of thing. Except those values in IDPA hold a lot more weight when you're outside of that 0 versus the time. And USPSA is more so speed, right? And being okay with those C's. Although, of course, we all want A's, we want alphas, and we don't want any Charlies. But you'll take that Charlie if it allows you to have less time in USPSA. And so I kept doing the IDPA practices to build up that accuracy as I'm running a stage, right? So you don't have to be as fast. It helps to be fast, but you don't have to be as fast. You want to focus on your accuracy. That way I can kind of find that middle ground when I'm running in USPSA, or probably not as quick as a lot of I think I'm running, but I'm probably super slow. But we'll get there, we'll get there. So that's kind of the differences that I found as well. As well as you'll see in the video, there are like, in terms of like lingo, you'll see like raw, which is your raw score, right? Because that doesn't include any of the time. You get time added when you miss. So say you get in the 0, that's your A. Cool, no time is added. If you get out the 1, that's 1 second added to your raw score. After your raw score, you then get a, You get a final score, which is your whole time, right? So it's very time-based with your accuracy, right? No real just time kind of thing like USPSA. All right, I'm drawing a blank here. So much information to share. Also, they have no threats. So, like in USPSA, you have no shoots. For IDPA, you also have no threats. You'll see with like the hands, things like that. And so those, if you hit those, you get like 5 or 10 second penalties, and that also adds to your time as well. So I always battle with the no shoots and no threats. But this one here, the no threats were really, they really just weren't feeling me that day, and had a lot of mishaps. And we'll go through, I don't want to spill too many beans, but we'll go ahead and jump into my dry fire. So at every competition, even IDPA, you have a safety table where you can only handle your firearm, no ammo. So I get there with the little pouch with my firearm in it. And I take it out, holster it, check to see if it's clear, check my dot, because I have to change my dot settings from dry firing in the house to outside, what's a little brighter. I tend to have to turn it up in the outside and down when I'm in the house. And so I just want to make sure that's up and good to go. You can also do that, when you're on the line, making ready, things like that as well. But while I'm there, I try to just set it and make sure it's good initially. And then I'll do like 2 or 3 dry fire draws for my setup, make sure everything is good, stable, tight, no screws need to be tight and things like that. And I have the cadence down to an extent, right? Because stage planning sometimes goes out the window. But enough talking. Don't want this video to be too long. I believe the clips are 3 minutes. This is probably already almost 10 minutes. Don't want to hold you guys. So let's get into it. So this was stage 2, which is really my stage 1 because we were squat 2. So this one was my first run and it was pretty solid. The only thing that I messed up on was the steel. Steel is usually my kryptonite, and I gotta work on that. I know I should manifest good things, but going into this stage plan, I already plan to at least aim for the steel 2 or 3 times, and hopefully get on the 3rd shot. I think I took maybe like 4 or 5 and had to do some readjustment because it was like the small circle steel, right? And those are very finicky, especially like with like the slightest dip or slightest anticipation, anything like that, it'll throw it off. And I anticipated having to do that, but what I didn't do is when I was running, It's usually like 2 targets here, 2 targets there, 2 targets there, and you're good to go. But what I forgot was that I had to hit the steal from that same spot that I hit the other targets, for safety purposes, of course, and that's just how the stage was set up. So when I went to do the last 2 targets before the steal, I actually ran for it in an attempt to go to the other targets, but I had to come back and hit the steal. And then that added more to the coming back, added more time. And then all the shots I put towards the steal added even more time. And then eventually I got it, and I had to run up and do the other targets. Now those targets, they had a different kind of swinger, right? So that swinger in IDPA was called the drunken monkey. And it kind of bobs and weaves, and you can't hit it because it is a no threat as well. And as you go through, you'll kind of see all the other targets, like with the hands, those are non-threats, and you can't hit those. Those will cause a 5 to 10 second penalty for time. But yeah, even with the drunken monkey swinger thing, those were zeros. I think the one that I dropped was in the beginning, I want to say close to the beginning, where I got a hit in the 1. And I got that points down is the PD that you'll see in the clips. That's what that means, point down. PEN is penalty, NT is non-threats, and then you have your raw time before any of the additional time, and then your final time for that stage. So that was my first stage. I felt good about it. I do feel, and you'll see in more of the clips, that the stages I ran were put in order of difficulty, and it kind of went, I don't want to say downhill, but I kind of slipped up on a few. So, all right, let's keep rolling. So stage 3, I actually enjoyed a lot. That might have been one of my favorite stages because I did pretty good in it. And let's see. So the first 2, you have t-shirts over the targets, which was actually my first time seeing and shooting that. So you have to kind of have a general idea, which is, like I said, IDPA is very like defensive, right? So the people that you're going up against in the real world aren't going to be paper targets. They're not going to have an A zone or 0 zone where you know where to kind of shoot, right? You're just aiming center mass. So that was a good practice for me to do that. And I actually know that area is where I got my 1 down, right? So if you notice, for that first target on the left, I went bang, bang. And then on the second one, I went bang, bang, right? So that second shot on the second target was way too quick. And I didn't let my dot and muzzle settle enough. And it ended up shooting it low, right? So I needed to have just a little more time in between that second shot, and I would have been fine on that one. The other ones were pretty solid. I think I got 1 more down on one of the other targets. But other than that, it was a very solid run. Even in that cluster of targets in the back, you had one that was like a half black, and then you had to hit a few there. I had to do a lot of headshots in this competition, which wasn't bad. And this was actually my first time running my Walther PDP with my new Parker Mountain Machine comp. Because this gun is very snappy in itself, right? I love it. It's very ergonomically sound in terms of in your hands, but just because it has such a large real estate at the top with the slide and everything, it tends to be a little heavy, right? So it also came with a threaded barrel, and I'm like, hey, I have a threaded barrel. Threaded barrels are for compensators. So why am I not putting a compensator on here yet? So I went ahead and threw one on, and I definitely felt a difference shooting this competition. I felt like I was able to kind of have a lot quicker follow-up shots. Not as quick as that first one that I messed up. That was really like me and the double taps, like, gotta chill out a little bit. It's cool, but if I just gave it like a millisecond more, I would have been right back on target. But yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. So let's move on to the next one. saying, I was once told that distance targets isn't a thing. Now, as right as that might be, distance targets are a thing for me. But we'll get there. So starting off on this one, you had to have your gun unloaded on the barrel. So that's good because you never know if your gun will be unloaded or not when you're shooting. Essentially, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, it should be one in the chamber. But to each his own. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So that was good practice on how fast you can get that done, right? On that second, I hit the first target fine. On the second one to the right, I hit the non-threat, and immediately, like, some of these I catch, and I'm like, dang it, that's why the RO in the back looked back and laughed, because I'm saying all kinds of choice words. I couldn't send that in here because I was like, dang, I missed that. Like, and then I have to make it up, right? So, but I already know there's really no real makeup because that's already time added for just hitting it. And then we move on to the little, what do you call it? The hole, right? So you have the portal, and you don't want to get sucked into the portal. But essentially the targets, they got increasingly farther and farther back. And also the one in the far left corner, I also hit the non-threat for, right? So the non-threat, this is the target, and the non-threat was down here. You have very minimal zero zone, and then you have a headshot, right? And so I probably could have just gone for the headshot. I think I did for like the last couple, but the first one or two, I think, might have clipped that non-threat. But other than that, this one wasn't too bad. I do know that the points down and the penalties and the non-threats really added up from a raw score of like 20 to a final score of like 40 something. So I do need to work on that a bit more, and I think with more practice, I'll get there. But there's something about just the distance. I don't know. Practice makes perfect, though, so we'll get there. So for this stage, it was a little bit more bobbing weaving, right? So this one was essentially, you wake up in the middle of the night and there's some intruders in your home. So that's what happened here. But for the targets on, some of the targets, there was like this black shape in the middle. They consider that shield, armor, things like that. So you can't hit that. That's also no shoot as well. So with those, you of course would have to be forced to do headshots. So that is what we did on this one, and it was fine until I messed up the order, right? So on the right, it was fine, and then I moved over to the left, and the three in the left, I guess I shot them out of order in terms of distance, right? So I went out to in, but in terms of how close they were, that was shot out of order, so that was also a penalty. And then when I moved over to the third section of targets, that was way too close for me to not just double tap and point and shoot, right? So I need to work on more not looking for the dot, right? Just your wherever your eyes go, the dot will follow, right? So I need to focus on that as well. And, just grip and positioning, because if it's already on point with your transition, right? So when you're standing still, it's easy enough said than done. When you're actually moving, that kind of interferes with it a little bit as well. And then to the end, when we started off, from the beginning, we started off unloaded on the barrel and we were lying on our back. Simulating like you were in a bed and you were asleep, right? So you get up and everything is unloaded and that you have on your person. So now you have to kind of load up and get ready. And so when I did that, I was trying to try something new and transition, do a reload on transition, right? And so I left one at the barrel, which was fine. The problem with that is, in order to load up quickly, I utilized the magnet on my belt, and I need to do a little more practice with it because it's so strong, which is a good thing so it doesn't fall. But when I go to take it off, it's a little harder, right? And so that's what happened at the end there when I ran dry. I went to grab it and it wasn't coming off. But I eventually got it and got back to work there. So that was that one. Just, I need to work on transitions, not looking at the dot, and reloading, different types of reloads. So there goes that one. I think my second shot on the targets to the right also was a beautiful headshot, but it was to a non-threat. So the minute I saw that and confirmed that shot, I was devastated, to say the least. And I think that really kind of just tanked everything from there. Because how do you start off like that? But it's all good. Okay, so stage one was actually my last stage, and I loved it, honestly. The simulation of you being in the car with your hands on the steering wheel and your firearm is, next to you or somewhere in the vicinity of the front area seating. You kind of, when the timer goes off, you pick it up one-handed and you just pop right there at your window. You get out and you have two in front of you. So you're using the door kind of as your cover, right? So pop. And you go around the car and there's two more. They call them surprise targets, right? So you shoot them where you are. For some reason, that first surprise target that I got after getting out the car and coming around, I just couldn't get the seat. I just couldn't get my shooting in the right area. And so RO was like, "Are you going for all zeros?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm trying." But it ended up okay. And so we keep going. And as I get to the two targets behind the barrels, I just one-handed right over it, right? The problem is when I one-handed it right over, and you probably saw, I got one on the black, right? So it was like a V-shaped black, which isn't good. Of course, it adds time because I didn't do a makeup shot or anything like that. And I saw it. I knew it did it. That was the first shot. I did the second shot. It was fine. I went on to the next target next to it and did pop. But I never came back to do another shot. And the RO was like, "Oh no, I didn't notice you did that." Yeah, and I was like, I noticed, but for some reason I just didn't. It wasn't sitting that I needed to redo the shot, remake up the shot. So that's where those non-threats, penalties, and points down occurred on this one. But all in all, I honestly loved shooting the IDPA competition and match. And I'll likely do a lot more of them. It is different, but different in a good way. And I feel like it helps hone in on a different set of skills to have, even if you never know. You might never know if you're going to need to use them, but even if you do or don't, you at least have them in your toolbox to do so. So that was my journey in my first IDPA match. I definitely will sign up again. I'm looking for any feedback you guys might have. If you guys are interested in joining your competition journey, if you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to reach out. I'm always, and if you're already doing your competition journey, please provide any feedback for me on some of these things and lessons that I'm learning and experiencing as I go. I'm open to any feedback. I'm just happy to be sharing a portion of this new hobby that I found and I love. An expensive one, but a great one. So yeah, let's keep it going. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with others as well. But thank you all for watching. If you stayed this long, because I have a feeling it's probably a long one. If you stayed this long, I appreciate your support so much. I started this channel in February and it's August. So I'm trying to keep it up. The community is awesome. The people are awesome. And I I've truly enjoyed it. So stay tactical, stay graceful. Peace.